Welcome to the Simple Healthy Life podcast, where our goal is to have real, insightful conversations on topics that we find interesting. And today, we are super excited to have a special guest, Miss Lauren Folan. Lauren is somebody who has changed my life multiple times, 2 times that I can think of. She really was the catalyst. I started to get into yoga, and luckily I ran into her. She was teaching in Plymouth, right here in Plymouth. And it wasn't just the words she chose to use or the vibe that the room was. I really saw that yoga and fitness, because I was into fitness at the time, could kind of meld together. The second time she changed my life is when I chose to become a yoga instructor. And I could think of no better person than to teach me yoga. And while I knew I was getting into the yoga community, I did not know I was about to get into the breathwork community. Yeah. And she helped my head explode on her floor one day. And so here we are. We're 10 years later.
It's wild.
And wild that we have known each other that long. So we are super excited to have you. And can't wait to let you talk a little bit about you and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I haven't known you for 10 years, but what I do know of Lauren is you're a bit of like a myth. So you're on this podcast, and some people are listening to you. Some people are listening to you and seeing you, but there's an energy that you carry that's hard to describe, and that's, you know, Alicia at one point was talking about you. She's like, Lauren's so great, and you know all these facts about Lauren, but you know the one that stands out is like her energy is just so crazy, and like in the best possible way. It's hard to describe, and of course MJ says that kind of stuff all the time. So you are the myth, the Lauren myth, and so how did you come to be? How did you come to be the myth as some people view it? What is Lauren about? Who is Lauren?
Appreciate that a lot, and I'm understanding that more and more as of late, especially with my past journeying in the darkness retreat in Guatemala, that was one of the things. That it's my frequency. The frequency that I radiate is one of my gifts, and I can have this pleasure of being able to merge with people and feel their like darkest moments as well as their like true potential and highest moment, and it opens people up. But most of my life, I thought everyone could do that, and I was basically the fish in water. Like you don't know until you know. And my upbringing is very much like a standard American upbringing. I was a perfectionist. I shut down all my emotions. I was very reserved, very shy. I was the best at everything I could possibly do, you know. I grew up in a volatile household where my parents are super loving and great, but my dad was emotionally shut off. My mom was emotionally irrational all over the place. My grandparents lived across the street, and my grandfather was basically a tyrant, And at that point, I learned emotion wasn't safe, who I wasn't safe, things of that nature weren't safe. So the best thing I could do to balance that was be perfect. So I became an overachiever. I did love cheese as well.
I love it.
I became an overachiever. Overachiever, people pleaser, and perfectionist who was emotionally numb to the world. And that served me really, really well in what we grow up in American society, because I became a straight A student, captain of all my sports, all-star athlete in every club, leader of every club, worked and keep this complete successful achieving life all through my entire existence through high school. And then I did what I was supposed to do. Went to the prestigious college, double majored in corporate finance and accounting and investment banking and all of those different things, and got the corporate amazing job where I was supposed to lead. I was being groomed to lead the company and all of these different aspects. But I always had this mystical, magical side to me. I was always obsessed with nature. I was always obsessed with Harry Potter, and I was a witch every year for Halloween, and I would spend my days in the woods making potions with berries when I was little and doing all of that fun stuff. And I was also a bit of a conspiracy theorist even back then. I would write my papers in history on how, like, the government assassinated Lincoln. It wasn't actually whatever Booth his name is. I don't even remember. It would be like 20-page papers on that stuff. But I was still leading the very systematic life that we're groomed for in our society. And it was in college that I was perfect up until college. And then I was let out of the bag, right? But I still maintained super high grades, super high friend base, but I was blacking out 5 to 7 days a week, partying, staying up all night studying for exams, living the college lifestyle. Again, very expected of the American society, right? Like, it's so standard. But that's when there was a lot of the pressure is coming up, and I became bulimic, had eating disorders, all of these different kind of shadow aspects of myself were pulling through, but still I wasn't aware until I went to Australia. Realistically, I studied abroad my junior year, and something in me changed in that moment. I don't know what it is. I think it's actually the energy of Australia. It's such a mystical place itself. It's such a high frequency place, and they have, I don't know if you've ever heard of like the crystals that are planted around the world, and like the skull crystals and stuff like that. But in the outback there, Australia is supposed to be one of the homes to it as well. Right. So I think a frequency woke up in me. And it was in that point where I was like, I'm going to work for 2 years. I'm going to go be a teacher because I love kids. And then I'm going to be a yoga instructor. So, but I didn't tell anyone else that. I just continued to carry on. I just knew that within. So I graduated college, and I was getting into yoga as well in college, but it was more of, it made me look awesome, right? I still had that slighted perspective of myself, that view, that bulimic, that anorexic. I used to run like miles on top of miles just to burn off food I wasn't even eating. So when I went up to Australia as well, that all stopped. So I stopped having eating disorders for the most part. If I got drunk and like ate a ton of pizzas, I was still throwing up and things like that. But it shifted that perspective in me as well. So I graduated, got the job at Liberty Mutual. And when I got it, I also already knew I was going to be quitting in the 2 years because it was a 2-year program of like grooming you for the company. And it was so funny when I was there. They were like, you do great work. Oh my God, it's so awesome. It's so fast. It's so on top. They're like, can you pretend that you care? And I was like, no. I'd be like, no, like I already know the questions. I don't care. I'm out. But they didn't know that either. So I worked 2 years for there, and I knew, again, I was like, okay, how do I get out of this? Because I was still a people pleaser, right? I wanted to be successful for my family. We were driven by being successful, my grandfather, that whole ideology. And I was like, how do I get out of this? And I was like, no one can tell me I'm doing something wrong if I go help youth in education. And I always wanted to be a teacher when I was little, so it was popping back up, and it never made you enough money. Right? I was like, oh, you don't make money being a teacher. I'm going to go to business school and own people, legit, like wanted to be Donald Trump. Legit. Loved The Apprentice. So I went to school again and did a post-bac in secondary education for math. I love math. I love secret geometry, all of those types of things. They've always fascinated me. I've always been good at it. But at the same time, I became a yoga instructor as well. And that started to open me to the mystical side, the energy side of the world. But granted, when I was a yoga instructor, I still didn't eat vegetables. I had no idea what breath work. I had no idea what self-love was. I was still partying all the time, still blacking out a lot as well, you know. I still had this imbalance within me. But I did them both at the same time. But I was doing the yoga mainly for the physical purposes of it. And I was probably like 24 at that point. So I went to school for both of them at the same time. And I got a job teaching middle high school math. And I started teaching yoga at the same time. But it took me a little bit longer because I've had a huge fear of public speaking my entire life. Like, I couldn't public speak.
Really?
Like, I'd be shaking. I'd be kicking like the podium, sweating. Like, it was the worst fear of mine ever. People used to come up to me after, even in college and stuff like that, and be like, I'm so sorry, like you had to public speak, because it was that visibly uncomfortable for me. And they wanted me to do a presentation when I was in Liberty Mutual too. And I was like, oh, I'm definitely quitting. Like, no way am I doing that. So teaching kids actually, and doing the inner work as well, but teaching kids actually really boosted me out of that fear of speaking, which I find super interesting. But I knew I wasn't going to be teaching for forever. And then pain was just starting to riddle my body. So I had pain in my wrists, my knees, my back. It would jump around. I was like a waitress, and I was wearing wrist guards waitressing. It was so ridiculous.
At like 23, 24 years old?
Yeah, 20,
Wow.
24, 25, 26. Yeah, wearing wrist guards. And everyone, I would be spending thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on every type of thing you could ask for. Every medical, every CAT scans. I was getting migraines. Every acupuncture, holistic means as well. Not all of like the energy work. I wasn't at a place there yet, but I was going to all the PT, chiropractors, regular doctors, and everyone's like, we don't know what's wrong with you. Here's muscle relaxers. Because I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. I wouldn't be able to, it would hurt getting out of the car. And I found this book, and it was called Healing Back Pain. And I was still teaching yoga at this point, and doing advanced trainings and learning more about energy and switching different things in my lifestyle of like I went vegetarian and opening more up into the energetic world of everything. But I picked up this book, Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno. And it was about the mind-body connection. Right. And it was about how emotion can cause disease and pain in the body. And this was 5 years of chronic pain that no one knew what was wrong with me. And in a week of journaling and releasing, 1 week, in releasing emotion, all the pain went away and never came back. Wow. So that like catapulted me onto an entire new path. I retired from teaching. I like to say I didn't quit, I retired. I retired from Liberty Mutual, and I retired from teaching.
I love it.
My family was like, you can't say that. Like, you're not. I'm like, I retired.
Yeah.
You can't
Twice retired already.
Twice retired.
Nice
I've
work.
lived like 20 different lives already.
That's amazing.
And I've just began to evolve at that point and going deeper and deeper on the inner journey of myself, going into the depths of my shadows, going into the depths of my psyche, emotions that I've held on to, limiting beliefs, and clearing all of this out just has brought so much expansion 10 times over every single time I do something. And I never realized how much joy in love I could feel. And I say that every time I go and hit a new level. And it doesn't end. Like the capacity for unconditional love doesn't end. And it's like blissful, it's euphoric. So this pain journey catapulted me to all of these different modalities of going into the body, mystical experiences, and traveling the world to discover myself, basically. And from there, I went and trained in India, and that's where I really shifted my physical yoga practice to the energetic meditation, emotional, and I did meditation trainings and breath work and all of these chakra awakenings, and I have had several kundalini awakenings and experiences as well as the heart just opens, expands, and that brought me into other aspects of journeying with plant medicine. I've done literally probably everything you could imagine, from mushrooms and San Pedro and Bufo to ayahuasca, and then iboga, which is extremely intense but so powerful. And it's brought me to even other aspects of going within, and because I love the plant so much because it opens you. But there's a time and space I feel people can get too attached to the plants because they're still searching outside themselves for the answers. And now it's brought me more to the breath. And the breath has been the most profound out of all of the experiences I've ever encountered. It's been the most enlightening, heart-opening, soul-finding connections I've made. And similar with the dark. I love the dark as well because, again, it's you. It's you embodying you and finding the answers within without the means. Not saying that plant medicine shouldn't be done. I highly recommend them for everyone. But there's a point. If you're doing ayahuasca 100 times, why are you searching for things outside yourself? There's a slighted perspective too. It's finding that balance with it all and honoring that. And that's where it's brought me to. I retired from teaching, like I said, and just went full yoga, full breath, full energy healing. And now I just hold these big experiences for people to go into themselves, to clear their energies, to connect with their limiting beliefs, to feel emotion, because we live in a society that doesn't say that's safe. And it's actually frowned upon. But it's our biggest superpower, to connect back with our intuition and how we feel and our guiding force to live our most authentic and confident and fulfilled life, to really awaken to the divinity within, because it is within us. It's not without us. Yeah, so that's a little bit about my journey.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's
And there's probably a lot more. There's all the shadows and ups and downs. But I've had like family. My mom's had mental health, and I brought her down to ayahuasca and all of these things. That's hugely benefited her and all of these supports. So yeah, I've just seen a lot of change in the people I love around me, which has been huge.
So currently, you kind of help people experience a lot of the same unveilings that you've experienced.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. It's coming back to their truth and divinity within, and feeling their feels and the slighted shadow aspects of ourselves. Because when we repress emotion, when we repress energy, it stays within us. And we're all frequency, we're all vibration. So that energy is sticky, it's held on to. And if it's sticky and held on to, it keeps us at a lower emitting frequency, a lower vibration, or even like a heart expansion is limited, because you're holding on to grief, you're holding on to pain, you're holding on to anger. There's nothing bad with any of these emotions. They're beautiful. We need anger, grief, pain, and sadness. And when you get to a point, you can enjoy experiencing them. Like, I'm at a point in my life when I get angry, like, it feels really good. Like, pain feels good. It's because I learned how to not hold on to it anymore. When you learn how to process through, everything shifts. Because if you were to hold on to excitement forever, and you were excited all the time, and you live like this, and you're like, oh my God, MJ, oh my God, that would be chaotic.
Yes.
That would be detrimental to your health.
Yes.
But we learn how to process that through.
Yes.
The same with anger, except we hold on to it. If we just processed it through, be like a kid, laugh, cry, scream, okay, let me go play again, done. But we're like, oh, don't get mad, so we hold, you know?
So just to clarify a little bit, when you say, and I think I understand this, but I'm just trying to bring it together. So when you say like anger, some of these like emotions that are associated with negative feelings, you're saying that you value the experience of them, not necessarily that they feel good, but you value the fact that they're in your life and that their experience in and of itself.
Yes, I value the lessons that come from them, but I'm actually at a point where they feel good.
Well, that's great.
It's wild, and I didn't know that was going to come. It's newer for me. Yeah. It's, again, something that came from my journey in Guatemala of, like, I was feeling deep shame, anger, and rage, and pain. But it didn't, it felt good. It felt, I was just pendulating with emotion. It was just an experience because I was detached from the story.
Yeah.
And through meditation and through strengthening the mind, you can create that space between the thoughts to detach a story. And that's why meditation isn't so important, because it gives you strength. It's strengthening the muscle of your brain. So when you get enough strength, you can detach from that story. So you're just feeling the sensation, and then you're just playing with it.
Yeah.
You know? It's just pendulating around the body. And then, not even kidding, within minutes, it will dissipate. Like, excitement can dissipate within minutes. And then you have that open feeling again. You're like, oh, okay. And you integrate the lesson. So it's taken some time to land here, and who knows where I'm going next. But yeah, no, the experience itself is enjoyable. And if you can embrace that shadowy aspect of you even more, and like kind of be the villain of the energy of anger, and just like be like, yeah, I want to fuck something up. You know, it's giving that aspect of you, that part of you, a voice, and it's deeply, deeply healing. So I don't like to say there's negative emotions. It's really, really hard for me to say that. Even the scales that they show of the frequency of an emotion, they'll show like shame. You'll hear it all the time. Shame is the lowest vibrational emotion there is. I just don't know if I agree with that. And maybe I used to agree with that, and I used to be like, oh, shame's bad, da da da, because I was ignoring my shame. You know, now I really truly believe there is no good or bad. We need both for one. And if we can just experience it for what it is and take the lesson from it, it won't cause stagnancy in the body. The only reason why it lowers your vibration is because you're holding on to it. If you held on to the happiness, that would also lower your vibration from unconditional love, which everyone's striving for, right? The enlightenment aspect. Because happiness that would constrict you as well if you were that energy all the time. And you would stay there. You wouldn't grow. Yeah. So it's playing with this idea of there is no good or bad, truly. Yeah. And that's a very volatile idea to have sometimes, you know?
Man, it's so crazy to hear you say this from me, because, and we actually talked about this when I did my breath work with you, and I know I've told the audience, but I'll say it again, you know, you didn't prepare me or explain to me what was going to happen.
Like, I don't know how.
Yeah, and this was great. You just said, I remember showing up there that day, and you were like, all right, lay down on your back, and we're going to do breath work. You're going to breathe like this, and you showed, you know, breathe the belly breathing, chest breathing. And then Lauren, our friend Lauren Ahola, said these words, anytime I think, do I want to live I don't want to do my breath work, I think, do I really want to live a half-assed life? And of course, my ego jumped up, and I freaked out. I was like, I'll be the best breather in the room, for sure. And that was all I knew. Yeah. But what I'm bringing up now is because during that experience, I had an understanding, like you're talking about, that this thing inside of us, me specifically, only cared about vibration, and it didn't care. Well, let me back up. I had this super, really, really, really sad feeling about my cat who had just passed away. And it came to me and realized that the reason I was so sad was because I had so much love. And I realized at that point that I couldn't have been that sad if I didn't have that much love. And that's when it flipped inside me, and I realized that both were equal, both were important. And this thing inside me didn't care that I perceived it as good or bad. It just wanted the maximum amount of experience and vibration that it could have. And of course, the tears were coming, and you came over. I remember at some point, you know, put your hand on me and said, just keep going. But now here we are, fast forward 4 years later, and to hear you explain it so articulately, it actually just helped me even more. So for people out there listening, I would echo the little bit that I know about what she just said, as someone who's had an experience that can tell you that it was the breath that caused it. And I did get that message. So thank you.
Yeah, so amazing.
To take it back, way back, I want to talk specifically because I feel like the experience that I had where you didn't tell me what was supposed to happen sounds like it was the experience that you had when you started to read this book, where you read the book, did the work, and that flipped something inside you.
Yes.
And it sounds like I mean, I'm going to rewind this and play it again, but Ryan introduced you as someone who has this incredible energy that we can feel. It sounds like from that point you have taken this and worked on that. And what we're essentially telling you is whatever you're doing seems to be working.
I appreciate that.
So can you talk a little bit about that kind of flip that started it all for you, for anybody out there that might be thinking like, how do I start?
Yeah, it's for me, it was the pain, right? And this is the hard aspect of it. We wait till something really bad happens in our life or challenging, or like for me, it was pain, right? Because sometimes it's not outside of us. It had to come directly to me because I was so used to craziness. I was so used to chaos. I was so used to kind of terror, like growing up, or what I would see as terror, right? Volatility, anger, all of that type of energy. So I wasn't listening to the stress around me. Like there was physical signs already for me going up to the point of pain. Like I look back and things like I didn't get my period till I was like 17 years old, and then it was super light. I was bulimic. I was anorexic. I had all of these things. I was blacking out. I probably blacked out over thousands of times, and I would only drink to black out. To me, it's like, why would you just have one drink? Like that, still it makes no sense to me. Not gonna lie, but I just don't really drink that much anymore. I don't really drink. I'm like, well, what's the point? And now I just am I'm a very intense person, hence I like go to boga and shit like that. But I wasn't listening. The wisdom was always there. I just wasn't. We're not trained to listen to our intuition. We're trained to actually listen to everyone else outside of us. All the people who said, no, go make a shit ton of money, no matter how good you feel. Do the job, have the family, have the kids, play the game. And it wasn't until I couldn't move that I was awoken to it. So I always to people is like, do it before. Because we all have these programs, we all have these narratives that are guiding us. Universal law is as we believe, so it shall be. So what you believe truly is what's creating your world around you and your perceptions of it. So get ahead of it. But for me, it was the pain. And when the pain went away like that, that was just game switch. And I still had those openings of like going to Australia and the yoga, so I was more attuned to it. But it's something within you switches, like you said, because we are a information masturbation. Like we love it. We collect so much information and knowledge to the point that we get depressed because there's no way we can implement it all. And that's a huge problem in our society because we know so much, but we don't do anything with it. And it's that it moves through. So you know something, you get the knowledge, but then through experiences, you experiencing, you doing the work, you doing the breath, me journaling it out, not just reading and going over it analytically in my mind, like talk therapy kind of is, you played the same thing. You experience something in it. Then it switches to a deeper expression, a feeling, right? So I like to say it's like knowing. Then it's a feeling. And you're like, oh, shit, I know it all. Then it gets deeper because then you'll be like things you thought you knew and you felt, you're like, I know it, I feel it, I act upon it. But then it will switch again. It will become an embodiment of who you are, and it's just who you are, and it's that level. Because there's, even of what we're speaking, I was in your shoes, and I'm like, oh, I know it. And then I felt it, and then I felt it. I was like, oh, my God. And it was only a year or so later, I was like, oh my God, I didn't know or feel anything. And then like it became who I was. So it's this layering that switches as you do so. But for me, the experiences of putting action into it is the key. But you have to want it. You can't force anyone to do it. People have to want to change on their own. And unfortunately, people wait for the heart attack, for someone to die, for them to get super sick, for them to get dumped, for them to reach the depth of the darkness. Like my mom, she had to reach the lowest points of her life, not wanting to live, like being super erratic and all over the place, the doctors putting all of these labels on her that wasn't true. It was just trauma. Telling her she's bipolar, depressive, all of these things. But I tried to save her for 10 years. The moment I walked away and said, you do you, the moment she stopped because she had to want it. I couldn't want it for her. So that's the hard thing for people.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It makes great sense.
You kind of talk about these like defining moments, the heart attack or the accident or whatever it is, but and then talking about how action's so important and experience is so important. I mean, those are experiences. It's almost like you know, someone finds themselves like these emotions that they repress, externalize into some sort of behaviors, whether that's drinking or this or that, and then those repetitive kind of behaviors land them into this like very intense experience, and then only then do they decide, well, you know, maybe I should take a look at what is truly going on, right? So you're urging people to essentially find themselves before that.
Yeah, I really love it for you to find it before that, which is so hard to articulate or to express to people because they don't. I always used to just say, like, I never knew I wasn't happy. I never knew it. I thought I was living the dream life. until I felt something so expansive that I was like, what? This exists in this life? Because I thought I was like a happy, like through all of that stuff, drinking, partying, bulimic, I was like one of the happiest people you'll meet. I'm like, hey, yeah, what's up? Life is great. I just thought this was life was. So I always encouraged to try to people to find it before. And that's what you see in people who get, especially like our parents' age, right? I always find blessings to all of them because they raised us and brought us into this world and open space for us to be more like alive and make these choices, right? Because they live in a generation where they couldn't, but a lot of them retire, and then that's when it hits them, like boom. And that's why a lot of people live for 5 years after. They go a little bit crazy, or all these different things happen because they never had the time to discover themselves. So it hits differently.
Yeah, they've got to deal with who they are now.
Yeah.
Not just what they do.
And then it's the grief that comes in. I just lived my entire life living a life I didn't want to live.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to face. But it's your lesson, it's your divine timing, it's what you were put on this earth to do, and there's no right or wrong, right? Everything is truly divine. It's looking at every aspect of your life, no matter how challenging it is, no matter how traumatic it is, and being like, soul perspective, it's divine. If you can shift your perspective that way, so much space opens up. I was listening to a podcast. I'm doing a bean protocol, so I'm doing no sugar right now and eating so many beans. And it's super grounding. Like, it's awesome. It's allowing me to get into my anger a ton. But the woman who invented this protocol, she's like 65. I just love, she had this podcast that I was listening to, and she's like, I am just getting started. And she's 65 years old. She's like, I have so much energy. I am living life. She's like, this is just the beginning. And I just love that mentality. It's never too late. Like, it truly is.
Yeah.
I'm planning to live to like 150, so maybe more. So I'm still a baby.
Yeah. Well, I hope you do.
Oh, I will. No doubt.
Nice. Well, so far, I've known you for 10 years. You've done everything you've ever said you were going to do. So.
Oh, thank you.
I think we're still working on levitating. Though,
Levitate. Right? Oh, that's a big one. I was doing some shadow work on that today. I was like, why don't I have it? And I'm like, I fear that I'll be different and not belong, and it's too much power. All of these different things.
It's too much power.
Too much power. So I'm working through those limiting beliefs right now. Yeah, we're not joking when we say levitation. I 1,000% believe I can do it at one point.
I 1,000% agree with her.
Yeah.
That was amazing. That's amazing. You had brought up a really good point, and I think it's going to be mutually interesting for all of us, given the work that we're doing. We talked about like removing the story, right, and separating yourself, your emotions and thoughts and feelings from a story. And even as you described this kind of like the American upbringing, like, go play a bunch of sports and study a lot, and then go to college and do all this. It's almost like we get attached to that story, and that's what drives us. And we've been reading a book, Stories That Stick, and we're not super far in, but we've at least all understood the power of story. And in fact, one of the things that makes humans very unique in their own right is the fact that we can tell stories. We're the only creature that can tell stories. And I think a lot of like historical recounts of why we are where we are today in terms of I guess if you want to call it like evolutionary dominance, is because we can share stories and we can kind of corral people into stories. And so point being is that stories are incredibly powerful. And so when you say removing the story from an emotion, maybe talk a little bit about what that actually means for people who hear that. They're like, I don't even know what is it? What are you talking about?
Yeah, definitely. That's huge because everybody has a story. Everybody is programmed, right? You get your programming. Every belief of who you are right now as an adult, if you're not doing this inner work, every action you make, every subconscious programming is formed from the ages 0 to 7. So if you had parents that were non-existent, I'm not loved, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough. And I'm going to tell you right now, everyone in our society has those. I am not loved, I am not worthy, I am not enough. Whether it's from school, whether it's from a parent, whether it's from their caretaker, whether it's having no one, right? So these are our stories, and we have these programs within. And In order to create a belief, we have a thought and an emotion. And these two things tie together. So we have an emotion. You're crying because someone's not there. No one is there to support you. Right there you go. I'm not supported. I'm sad. They link together. That creates a belief. That belief, over time, you'll get situations that will continue to reflect that, and it becomes a state of being. It becomes who you are. And when we tie that, and then we hold on to those emotions like I was talking about a little bit earlier. So those are the emotions that stick in the body. In order to disconnect and shift who you are, you have to break the story from the emotion. You have to break the belief from the story, because your personality becomes your personal reality. Because you have an emotion, then you have a thought, then you have a thought, an emotion, a feeling, a thought, feeling, thought. They go after each other. And it's the emotion that comes first. The thought doesn't come first. The emotion comes first. The energetic exchange comes first. Then the body feels it, which we always think it's the other way around. The body feels it first, and then you create the story. So through these practices, through breath, through meditation, through all of these different modalities, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to break the thought from the emotion. Because if you had sadness and the I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I'm not loved, I can't do it, I don't believe myself, whatever your story, your programming might be, and you just had sadness, and you were just playing with that feeling in the body without being like, or if you lose someone, right? I'm never going to see them again. My whole life's going to change. This is that narrative that suffocates you. Then you're just pendulating the emotion. You're just feeling into sadness without the story behind it.
You're keeping it around, kind of.
Yes, but if you can create that break between it, then the emotion can clear in the body, and then it won't be as painful. Now, I talked about before, like I experience emotion now, and it's not challenging. It's actually kind of enjoyable at this point because I'm playing with it. Playing with anger, I'm playing with grief, I'm playing with sadness. And yeah, there's intensity in the body, but because I can separate the story so much, and I trust that everything is divine and everything is exactly as it should be so much, it doesn't have that same effect. And in order to change your beliefs, in order to change your personality, and in order to change your personal reality, then, like how you see this world, things that come into this world, you have to break the tether between emotion and story, or emotion and limiting belief. And when you process that energy of emotion through, you can open up space in the brain, create new neural pathways, because the energy isn't holding on to it anymore, to create and reprogram yourself, literally reprogram yourself with expanding thoughts of I am worthy, I am enough, I believe in myself. Because we're being programmed all day, every day, by our parents, by our society, whether they mean to or not. Like, you just learn that way. We learn from experience. TV all day, every day. That like is deep stuff, MK Ultra going into your brain, you know? Like, they know exactly what they're doing. But yeah, so that's what I mean by separating story, because if you can separate that story, the story is what causes the suffering. It's not the emotion, and we always blame the emotion, but it's the story that is causing the pain within you, because it's the narrative loop that hits you over and over and over again.
Yeah, no, I just have, there's so many things to say, and MJ, now I'm cutting you off probably, but
No.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, yeah, because we go down these negative rabbit holes. You use the example of like, I'm feeling sad because someone isn't present, I'm lonely, or whatever it might be, and then, oh, I'm never going to see this person again, and then my life's going to change, and I'm going to be this, and I'm going to be that, and as we go down these negative rabbit holes, maybe because to the brain it's pretty stimulating, like we know that this kind of like negative news and negative kind of stories are stimulating, and so the brain kind of likes that. But I always joke when I've talked to people about, we never go down positive rabbit holes. It's never like, oh wow, I had a great day today, and then, you know, who knows, tomorrow I'm going to meet this person, and then I'm going to like get into a political office, and then I'm going to become president. It's like we never go down these like equally irrational positive rabbit holes, but maybe we should.
Yeah,
maybe
it's like
we should.
That because we're programmed not to.
Right.
Because it keeps you small, it keeps you in your lane, it keeps you, and this could go into the entire conspiracy theory that I could get into right now. Like, the system works exactly as it's supposed to.
Disney.
Disney. The news and all of it, but we won't. But it is, the system works exactly, they don't want us to. And because we're trained to, and because we like playing the victim.
Yeah.
People enjoy it, and guess what? When you sit with it, and people are like, no, I'm not a victim. No, people love being like, oh, me, because a lot of times when you were a victim, people hugged you. You were trained. When you were crying, your mom picked you up and hugged you, and I'm saying that's a good thing to do. But over time, if you're not getting attention in positive ways, and the only time you got attention was when you felt shitty, you're going to create that later on in your life.
Who's the most powerful being?
You.
Yes, but also going along that same thought, a baby.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
a baby is the biggest victim of all. And so that kind of idea of like being a victim is actually a very powerful response to like loneliness, is because I could just be a big old baby and everyone can take care of me. And we know that because that was a crucial part of us.
And then it creates that whole dynamic. So, and then you there's so many other like interchangings that go into that as well, of why people love to go through that negative thought pattern. It's familiar, it's what we know, it's what we've learned. People love to talk shit. They'll sit there and talk about everyone. It's a good feeling. It just feels good. You love to complain. There's something about it. There's an energy behind it. It feels good in the body, and that's what needs to break. So if you continue to live in that energy with those beliefs, with those patterns, you're going to continue. The world is going to mirror that back to you, and situations are going to follow that. That's why it's so important to focus on your glimmers, like the positive things, because then it will start to create and open that energy. But it's work, It's breaking outside the box, which is challenging. It's challenging, especially for the mom or dad who works a 9 to 5 and has 3 kids and has to go to soccer and sports. There's no time. So that's why it's so important to start with putting yourself first, even if it's just 10 minutes a day. To start thinking with a more expanded state, or focusing and carrying on for yourself to try to focus on those things.
I don't think I've ever experienced or read or listened to something that I've wanted to go back and listen to again. As much as I want to go back and listen to this podcast again, because as you spoke, I can't count on both hands and both my feet, which everybody can see, the number of things that hit home with me, and examples in my life where that's accurate. And I feel like if we're all really spending the time to be honest with ourselves, we all recognize that the things you're saying are true. And it's obvious that you've put in a tremendous amount of work to learn these things. And I think to take it back to the very beginning, I think that there's an element to you now where you don't even have to speak them, where other people feel them when they're around you. And I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for all of the things that I have learned from you, and the things that I'm going to learn from you again as I rewatch this. And I think that's about, we're going to have to wrap that up. I know you have to go. I know you got a busy day. But I'm incredibly grateful to have you today. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I kind of echo everything that MJ says. Obviously, the myth, right? But I do have one final question.
Yes.
And this is one I'm always excited about. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
So it's funny because asking that, it puts a big. I'm not going to give you a standard answer, obviously. Yeah. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
As I evolve, there's not one piece of information that is the best advice, because it changes. And some of the advice that was the best advice in the past isn't the best advice for me anymore. And it changes so much, because I have changed so much. And it continues to change, right, and evolve and grow. And things I used to believe, I don't believe, and now I believe new things, and I go back to other things I believe, right? But to answer it is the whole emotional scope of that was that there is no good or bad emotion, and the understanding of that. And if you can honor your body and honor the bad and the good that we like to label, you will find freedom. And that didn't really come from someone. It was, again, my first darkness that like planted. It didn't come from me, but
Came from somewhere.
It came from somewhere. And that's something that has really, really hit home for me, of opening my eyes that there is no good or bad. Yeah. So why are we getting stuck? And to stop listening to other people.
Yeah.
It's always one of the best advice. Do not listen to anyone outside yourself. Stop searching for external gratification and answers, because the true wisdom is within. And I'm still learning this myself, right? I'm still embodying it, I should say, because there's part of me that's like, oh, but I want to go get that reading. Oh, but I want to take this course because this person knows. Oh, but No, the answers, because what is good for them isn't the same for you. Everybody's individual experience is uniquely different. So finding it, and that's, again, meditation and all of these practices are so important, because it strengthens the mind to separate the conscious, analytical, the rational mind that stops us in this, and opens us to the higher self, the emotional aspect, so we can start to actually listen to our own wisdom. But it's a practice. Just like self-love is a practice. We all expect to go to these things, and the next day we're like, oh, I love myself, and I'm intuitive, and I know everything. Yeah. No, it's a practice, and it strengthens over time. So trusting yourself in all emotion and everything that comes through is one of the best things you can do, in my personal opinion, and the best advice that someone has given me, or something, or some energy, or some, I don't know.
Somewhere
and outside of me. Outside of my rational mind, actually. Probably was me, just not my rational mind.
Interesting. Yeah, you can't.
Because we're all one, right?
Yeah. You can't receive wisdom, you have to find it, essentially.
Yeah. And people can ignite, the frequencies can ignite it within you. Like, I went to Amma the other day. She's the hugging saint. And she's amazing. I wasn't expecting this. She's a yogi. She's a spiritual leader of the world. She's hugged over 40 million people. Jeez. And I wasn't expecting this, but she walked in the building and I just started hysterically crying. Because I have mother wounds, and I have like divine, like femininity, like most women do. And I wasn't expecting that's never happened to me before. And then when I hugged her, like a frequency emitted in your heart. And it wasn't anything she said. She's awakening. Her frequency kind of merged with mine, and it awoke in the wisdom within, like you said. To come from within.
Wow. We might have to do a part 2.
Yeah, that'd be so fun. I would love that.
I would really like that.
I'm down.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, sharing your experiences, and giving your insights. So super helpful, and I'm sure that I know MJ took a lot from it. I took a lot from it. I'm sure so many other people will. So
yeah, it was so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, you can find us on Spotify and all the other podcast platforms. Just look us up, and we'll catch you next time.
Amazing.